Here we go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our very special hiatus episodes where we will be covering Asura's Bride, or Asura's Bride. Sorry, Haley has told us we hope the correct pronunciation. So we're super excited because this is not something we did before. And I think it's, oh gosh, I want to attribute this by name, but a fan asked me the other day, she was like, why don't you, are you ever going to do Asura's Bride or Asura's Bride? And I was like, oh my God, I never thought about it. So thank you to this person who I forgot her name, but I could look it up. And I'm so grateful for everyone for coming on. We have Elisabeth, Haley, and Chelsey, and Elisabeth and Haley have been on before, and Elisabeth is a fanfic writer. She wrote a Lily for Torah and is still writing a Lily for Torah, plus some other one-shots. And Chelsey is the author of Stages. So both of which are fantastic works. Chelsey also has one-shots. They both are doing a Renaissance fair one-shot thing. So check out their fanfic. I'll link it and let you guys introduce yourselves.
Okay. Let's say, you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Do it.
I'm Chelsey. You might know me as Peanut Butter and Shelly on AO3 Patreon. I think I'm PBNC on Webtoon. I live in Southern Illinois with my husband, our 2 fur kids, a dog and a cat. And started writing, started painting because of Midnight Poppy Land. Discovered it 2019, I believe. And it got me through pretty much a majority of 2020. So I'm super excited to be on here talking about the other webtoon.
Okay.
Yeah, so
no.
yeah, go ahead.
There's that awkward pause where we're like, you go. No, you go, Elisabeth. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Elisabeth. I like Mitty said, I've been on the podcast before. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with my husband Colin. No pets, but lots of plants. I think I have like 5 dozen houseplants. So that is actually a begonia behind me, and that's where my username comes from on AO3 Begonia Rex. That's a Begonia Rex plant. I wore my peony scarf tonight in honor of Ulan's tattoos because they're awesome. So yeah, and I'm excited to talk about Asura's Bride. Most people, I think, read Midnight Poppy Land first, and then we're like, oh, she did another comic. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about this one too.
Hi, I'm Haley. I'm not a writer on AO3, but I would like to be. Happy to be on again. I was really thrilled that you guys invited me to be back on. I had so much fun last time. I'm 28, married. I work at a meadery in Crown Point, Indiana, called Manic.
Just won awards.
Yeah. Oh, yes. We have won awards. We've won 1 gold, 1 silver, and 2 bronze at last year's International Mazer Cup competition. So if you feel like looking us up online, shameless plug right there. Yeah. So anywho, excited to be on. Like Elisabeth was mentioning, Asura's Bride. I think Lily was actually trying to win a some sort of competition that Webtoon was having. So she submitted Asura's Bride as to try to win. And unfortunately she didn't, but I think that brought us all kind of a little bit closer and made us a little more excited about Midnight Poppy Land. And I started reading that when it was on Canvas. It used to be called Discover. So been around for a little bit, but really happy to be on and discuss Asura's Bride.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, everyone. And it's funny, Elisabeth, you were talking about your outfit. So I realized that I'm wearing the same exact outfit that I was wearing when we first recorded video for this podcast, which, by the way, the outfit is my pajamas. One set of my pajamas. So it's actually an official dress that I used to wear as a dress, and then I got like holes and stretched out, and so now it's pajamas because I wore this like right after we got married. For Judaism, you have like a series of like parties right after you get married called 𝗕𝗵𝗆𝗆. So I wore this for my 𝗕𝗵𝗆𝗆. So I went from like nice fancy dress to pajamas, but anyway, that's why I'm not parting with it. And now it's my special Midnight Poppyland and Asura.
There you go.
So yeah, even wearing the same hat. Just happens to be. So we're going to start out by taking a look at the cover, which is the first thing that's posted. And my first thoughts when I saw this were that this was just stunning. And the artwork is very different than Midnight Poppyland. And it reminds me very much of like this dreamy watercolor. It's very light. It's kind of like faded. It really feels like you're transported to another world. And you know, and it kind of does really have that otherworldly feel, a little bit of a magical feel, which Midnight Poppyland doesn't have that quite that magical feel. It feels much more like in the real world. And like as soon as you open the comic, you're just transported. And it's just beautiful. We have this image of who we later see are Ulan and Yua, you know, man and a woman with the, as you said, the gorgeous peony tattoos and with the, you know, the fur capes. And we have the description. It says, in a war-torn land, on her way to an arranged marriage, a haughty princess is ambushed and held captive by bandits until she is rescued by a tired, hungry, and pissed off soldier. All the accidental knight in shining armor wants is to get some sleep after returning from the battlefield, but having a beautiful princess in tow is making it very difficult for him to do so in more ways than one. So obviously that's our cue to you know, our first innuendo joke over there, which we can't do without. So now let's get into the first panel. This one is called Prelude to a Storm. And we start out with some historical background, which is being narrated by what we later see is the king's advisor. And he's saying, among the 4 regions of the land, half the western kingdoms have been conquered by the great warrior king of the north. And I know when I read this right away, I was like, oh, so it's going to be one of those like epic, you know, stories, because it's like a very traditional format where you have battles and kingdoms and they're fighting against each other. So it's kind of like a larger scope and scale when you have this backdrop of battles between kingdoms.
Kind of reminds me of Game of Thrones too. If you're a fan of that,
that's
the North.
Exactly what I thought too. King of the North. Mm-hmm.
The North was like the White Walkers. Everyone feared the North, and everyone kind of fears this warrior king from the North.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And like just the visual imagery here, you have, you know, it's black. It starts off very black and that's very ominous. And, you know, it kind of, you see it like dripping down into this like gray, hazy thing. And it's just so evocative of, you know, like the mood, kind of like a little bit lost, a little bit like hiding. And this king is described as he's powerful, ferocious, brutal in his wars. And you see this warrior with, you know, full historical armor. And I'm not like a history of armor buff at all, but and neither do I know much about uniforms. I can't like talk about his historical accuracy, but you know, it's very detailed armor, and it looks like it's from a long time ago. I'm sure maybe there's some Chinese scholar out there who was like, oh, this is clearly from the year 948 because of this and this rivet over here. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah,
but it's a,
and I'm like, it's metal plate.
yeah.
Metal plate armor.
It's kind of cool how Lily blends a lot of Asian influence and culture, because she says that Midnight Poppyland takes place in Naran City, which is like a melting pot for a lot of different cultures. But just, yeah, looking at his armor, it almost looks samurai a little bit. But then you mentioned, yeah, the Chinese as well influence, and almost like Mongolian a little bit too. I mean, it's cool. I mean, she creates her own version of it, but it is like a amalgamation of different influences, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I feel like I wonder, I feel like I heard someone saying that Ulan was supposed to be Mongolian, but I've never read it myself, so I don't know. And I've combed through the Patreon comments, not now, but I definitely, over the course of my Midnight Poppyland obsession, I've combed through all the Patreon comments. I don't remember seeing that, but obviously it's possible I missed it. So
I don't know. Maybe I read it in a story somewhere, and it's canon to me now. Chelsey.
We're referencing where Haley thought that a detail was canon because she read it in Chelsea's stories.
It just was so, you know, it just felt so spot on.
It did. It felt right to me. It felt right.
Crack me up.
Well, and it was interesting coming to LadyLibris Patreon. Like, I didn't start reading Midnight Poppyland until this last spring, so April of 2020. So going on Patreon, you know, when I join a Patreon, I'll go all the way back and then kind of read forward. And so it was interesting, reading about her process of doing Asura's Bride, because that was actually before Midnight Poppyland got featured.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, you're right.
Midnight Poppyland was on Canvas or whatever it was called back then, Discover. And so Webtoons will run these comics where you usually submit like 6 comics, and then whichever one gets the most likes that they choose to feature. So she had Midnight Poppyland on Canvas, and then she did this one, and so she was actually trying to get Asura's Bride featured, but then they went with Midnight Poppyland.
That's right. That was the competition that I was trying to remember what she was doing it for. So yeah, I mean, either way, got her work out there for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it was interesting to kind of read about because, like, you know, like Mindy said, Midnight Poppyland is more realistic, you know, set in the here and now, and like Asura's Bride is almost like fantasy, history, magical. But apparently, it took her way longer to do these episodes because it's like a painterly style. Which I love. I thought it was beautiful, but I was just like, oh my gosh, how long did it take you to do this?
Yeah.
It's almost like an ink painting, like the Japanese ink painting. Yeah.
Yeah, the texture on the back, it reminds me of this recyclable rice paper that I bought for our thank you notes that had seeds embedded in it. You could plant it in the ground. That's, if you zoom in, you can really, really see that texture in the background.
Yeah.
Looks like it's done on like rice paper.
Yeah.
It's
well, and like the scenes with blood too, like if you've ever, not to be morbid, but like if you've ever like had blood just drop on a piece of paper and it's really bright at first, but then it fades out to like an almost like dirt brown color.
Right.
And like
a paper towel or something.
Yeah. And it kind of looks like with him like doing the spear that it was like painted on with blood kind of.
It does look supernatural for sure.
And it's funny because when I saw the blood speckles, the first thing I thought of was also the blood speckles that appear in Midnight Poppyland, because like you know, a couple of times it happens with Tora when he's, you know, beating up 𝗕𝗏𝗄𝗎, for example. So I thought of that right away, like the blood speckles there, and obviously it's on the poppy at the end of every episode. Yeah, so that's the King of the North, and he's described as insatiable in his thirst for battle and blood. And the advisor is saying he's closing in on us from the west. In a matter of months, our Shan Kingdom will crumble beneath the might of his fearsome army. And you have this image of like just devastation after battle, where soldiers are, you know, falling on the floor, and chariots are broken, and the flags are on the floor, ripped. So like this is something that they fear. They don't want that to happen to their country. It actually reminded me a lot of the image in Mulan, where they discover the battle after the what's the Shing, right? Father died.
Lieutenant Shang.
Shang, okay.
Yes. I thought the same thing. They come across that in that little girl's doll.
Yeah, and he sticks a sword in the ground.
Yeah, I definitely get those vibes too.
Yeah, so very haunting. This whole thing is very evocative. Like, you know, the ferocious king, you know, he looks scary as this like sunken in eyes with like a lot of black surrounding them. He's a very impassive face. And then, you know, this scene, everything is very haunting. There's a lot of fog throughout there. So it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just, the art is just incredible. So the advisor is telling the king, "Your Majesty, we must form an alliance with the Qianli kingdom immediately." And he's talking to the king. The king is wearing, they're both wearing robes. The king is wearing, you know, like a nice ornate robe with like an image of a moon and clouds on it. And he's overlooking, it looks like he's overlooking like from his castle and into the mountains. So, you know, it's something that is hard for him, right? It's not an easy message for him to absorb. Obviously, this whole time period seems like it's a very difficult time period for them, for the kingdom. And the king says, you know, we don't see their faces yet, and you just see like the the kind of like the somber set of his jawline, of King's jawline. Obviously, this is something like he doesn't seem very happy right now. He's, you know, in a serious mode. And he says, the king of 𝗕𝗄𝗃 has requested for my eldest daughter's hand in marriage, and to be wedded to his only son and heir to his throne as a symbol of our alliance. And obviously that's like a very common thing that happens, you know, with kingdoms, and has happened all over, where in order to strengthen alliances, people marry their kids off to each other, and like, you don't have to like each other, but you have to get married so that our kingdoms don't go to war.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too how the warring clans is just a recurring theme through Midnight Poppyland universe. I mean, it's not uncommon at that time for, I guess, civil war to be going on, but just interesting how well it ties in with Midnight Poppyland, but still is a totally different story.
That's so interesting. I never thought of it that way. Yeah, and you see the two flags over there, which I'm assuming is like a symbol of the two kingdoms, and, you know, wanting to be united. And then we have the advisor tells the king, your majesty, the eldest princess is blessed with beauty and intelligence. And you see, you know, a silhouette, just a faceless person who is, you know, the eldest princess. She seems very pretty. And, you know, it's highlighted against the background of this flowers, lotus flower, and like some reeds. Just very beautiful, very elegant. And her gifts will be the salvation of our kingdom. 𝗕𝗄𝗃 is the strongest kingdom in the eastern region with the largest army. To be looked upon favorably by their king is not an opportunity to be missed. So he's pushing with this. He says, you know, this is necessary for our kingdom, and like, you got to do this whether you like it or not. And the king does agree, right? It seems as though the advisor was a little worried about whether the king would agree, but he says, I understand, and it pains me greatly, but for the kingdom, sacrifices have to be made. Which again, you know, it is a sacrifice, because these people don't have love marriages. You know, they have marriages of political alliance. Prepare the princess for the journey. Immediately lock her up if you must. She will not be happy about this. And now we learn she actually is indeed not happy about this. And I'll pass it over to Haley, right?
Yeah. Passing the torch. Okay. So the advisor says, or a different advisor comes up and says, your majesty, the eldest princess has been missing since yesterday. I'd hate to be the guy bringing that message, but I'm probably why he's kneeling down. It's like, just don't hurt me. Oh,
right. I suspect he's not high ranking. I don't think he's I think he's probably a low ranking person in the castle.
We're gonna call him a footman.
Yeah.
He's a footman. So yeah, the footman is saying her handmaidens reported that, footman, handmaidens, got it. Reported that she had escaped from the palace grounds after finding out about the marriage proposal from the 𝗕𝗄𝗃 king. And the next panel, the king is, you can really see, he looks his age. He's got wrinkles right by his corners of his eyes. He looks just freaked out. He's yelling, disappeared? How could such a thing have happened? The princess needs to leave immediately. We do not have much time left. So, I mean, he probably cares for his daughter, but he has to think about his whole kingdom and all the people that live in his kingdom. That'd be a pretty awful choice to have to make.
And
yeah.
I kind of assume, based on the fact that she ran away, at least from what we know over here, is that she seems to be a strong-minded person, you know, and she doesn't want to do this.
Yeah. Well, and they really don't, I mean, you don't really know much about her. They just say she's beautiful and intelligent, and I mean, those are good things, but going into the next panel with fourth princess 𝗂𝗏, father, forgive me for intruding, but daughter, what are you, fourth princess? Until eldest sister has been found, please allow me to take her place. And to me, it was, so they described eldest sister as beautiful and intelligent, which we haven't seen her character yet, so we don't really know much else about her, but fourth princess obviously is very beautiful. We'll find out later she's intelligent, but right here she shows bravery and loyalty as well, for her country and for her father. So she's a pretty cool chick, I think.
I love how they're both depicted, because you're like, we do find out that the other sister that's run off is brave, but when you initially see her, she is faceless and she's depicted against flowers. So to me, it's like she's delicate. She doesn't really have much of an identity. It's, you know, it's strictly her gifts are that she's beautiful and intelligent. They don't say anything about her being, you know, headstrong or brave or, you know, loyal to how she feels. But then the first time you see 𝗂𝗂, you see her full face, and, you know, you don't see anything as far as her body, her clothes. She's wrapped in a cloak, and you see her depicted against openness. It looks completely open. And to me, that better depicts how she is. Like, she's up front about herself. And we find that out, you know, later with her interactions with other people. But I love the differences and how they're presented.
Yeah, she looks like a doll. Her skin is just beautiful, and I mean, there's not much color, but I mean, you can see her lips are just like faintly a reddish. I mean, there is color in this comic, but it's very muted. And when you do see color, I feel like it just draws your eye that much more.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so she says, please allow me to take, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir. One impression that I had, and I'm curious if you also had this, but the fact that the oldest princess was talked about as being beautiful and intelligent, to me, it kind of felt like she overshadowed the rest of the sisters. And obviously that tends to be the case, I think, with oldest siblings in general. They usually are more dominant. And especially if they're royalty, there's expectations for the oldest sibling that the other ones don't have. And it seems as though, like, from other things that I've read, you know, if you're giving your kid away in marriage, the first princess is more, you know, honorable than like the second princess, and she's the fourth. So I got the impression right away that, like, for the fourth princess was like, okay, who are you? You know, like, you know, it's like when King David, like when Samuel came to anoint one of Jesse's kids, and he was like, okay, I tried all 7 sons and none of them are the one. They're like, do you have any more sons? And they're like, oh yeah, we have David, he's in the field. So I felt like
there's that other kid. Yeah.
Yeah, he's over there.
Yeah. So I felt like 𝗂𝗂 kind of had that, where she was overlooked and nobody really paid any attention to her. And like, but she's also the fourth princess. Like, I don't know if any of you have like lots of kids in your family, but like the younger you are, like the less attention you get, because like the more siblings you have ahead of you, and like you have to compete for attention. So I really get the feeling that, I mean, at least this was my first thoughts, that like 𝗂𝗂 was just someone that nobody really paid much attention to and didn't expect much out of her.
Right.
Well, I mean, not to jump ahead, but I'm pretty sure, like, in one of the later episodes, they mentioned that she's actually adopted. She's an adopted princess. So maybe she was thought of as like lower, like, I mean, why would you adopt her if not to treat her like a princess? But it reminds me of the Prince of Persia. I don't know if you guys are like gamers or at all, but in the movie, Jake Gyllenhaal's character is like it's kind of like an Aladdin situation. He's a street rat, but the king sees something in him that makes him say, oh, well, you're gonna be my new son. You're a prince now. So maybe that was a similar, like, maybe they saw her bravery and intelligence as a young girl, and that's why they were like, well, you're adopted now, you're a princess. So, you know, maybe something like that. But
and I wonder also if, you know, for her, this is a way for her to finally redeem herself and find, you know, honor and gain, you know, like some attention, because, you know, if she's been overlooked, which again, this is, you know, not necessarily, so this is again an interpretation, but this would be a way for her to show everybody what she can do.
Right. I have
in addition to like actually like saving the kingdom, you know.
Chelsey, were you gonna say something?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll go on to the next one, and then we have a panel of just like the trees, misty. It kind of gives me a Twilight vibe, Pacific Northwesty vibe. I don't think I mentioned to you guys last time that I did have COVID, so I was in quarantine, obviously for 2 weeks, and I actually had a Twilight marathon and rewatched all of those movies. Oh my God, so bad. They were so bad, but still good in like a nostalgia way, you know?
I've definitely done that when I didn't have COVID. Like, so rude.
No excuse, Chelsey.
No excuse.
I don't know what was wrong with me.
It's just, it was a whim. I was like, oh my God, they have all of them on Amazon Prime. I'm doing this. I'm
Nostalgia
committing.
for
I'm
me.
nervous because I watched it when I was young and I liked it back then. I'm like, if I watch it now, I don't think I'll like it anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
I was a little too old for Twilight when it came out.
Well, you know, my mom read them. So,
yeah.
yeah. Well, oh, and then 50 Shades of Grey, my 80-year-old grandmother read them. She said, I think they're kinky. And I was like, okay, Graham, cool.
My grandma dragged a bunch of my aunts to see Magic Mike when it came out.
Oh, love Magic
like,
Mike.
Nope, not gonna do that one with you, Grandma.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Wow, your grandmas are a little more adventurous than mine are.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Moving on. So the panel with the trees, it's very kind of foggy, misty, mysterious, creepy. I think this is actually where I'm supposed to hand it off to Chelsey.
Okay. So yeah, it looks pretty bleak. It even leads off with a kind of bleak overture of words. A marriage during war times is a highly inauspicious and joyless affair. And that panel, I mean, you get that 100%. And it's like you said, the colors, you're really drawn in. The royal guards are decked out in red capes. The caravan is colored, you know, light brown. It almost kind of fades into the background a bit. It says, that is why the carriages are dull and the procession silent. At least that was what the handmaidens told me. And then there's a small panel of the two handmaidens comforting 𝗂𝗂. And it says, 𝗤𝗄𝗄, who is that? Am I pronouncing that correctly, Haley?
I think it's she.
I'm gonna your advice.
One of my friends has
Yeah.
one of my friends has a Chinese daughter whose name is she said it's 𝗪𝗓. So I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, say I wasn't sure.
I think usually, I could be wrong, but I think usually in Chinese the X's are pronounced as Z's. I think.
See, that's how I saw it, was 𝗤𝗄𝗄, but I, you know, reading it in your head and now reading it out loud, it's like, okay, that doesn't sound right.
We're muddling through together.
So 𝗤𝗄𝗄/𝗪𝗓 feels sad that your highness can't experience the wedding every princess dreams of, and she's patting 𝗂𝗂 on the shoulder. And the other one is covering her eyes. She's crying. It must be hard on you, our beloved princess. And 𝗂𝗂 kind of looks unimpressed. It's like, guys, it's not that big of a deal. It's fine. Stop crying. It's only temporary. I'll be back. And then
Why does she think she'll be back?
Yeah, why does she think it's temporary? Does she think first princess is gonna come back and take her place?
Change your mind. Yeah. I honestly don't know why she thought she was coming back.
Does she think the guy will reject her and be like, no, I'll get away from here?
Yeah.
Ew. You're the fourth princess.
Yeah. We want a refund.
I want your sloppy seconds.
Yeah, I mean,
Sloppy
especially
fourths.
right. In those days, I mean, these days, like, we're very mobile, so we travel back and forth. But in those days, like, if you went away to marry your husband, like, you stayed in his kingdom and you didn't come back. Like,
exactly.
I mean,
you stayed on as a handmaiden, maybe, if you weren't, seated in royalty. Yeah, that puzzled me too. I'm like, their reactions are spot on, 𝗂𝗂. If anything, you're not reacting appropriately.
she's very optimistic, a little blindly so.
She's lying to herself. And then it goes on, but more importantly, it's to avoid unnecessary attention out here in the wilderness. And I really like that. You get that full sense that they are far away from home. Like anything happens here, you know. And it shows her sitting in the carriage. She's wrapped in the cloak, a little bit more done up than the last few times we've seen her. There's red, looks like sheer curtains, a red seat, which to me screams royalty. You know, this is a royal ride. But she looks forlorn. She doesn't obviously want to be here, do this, but she's obviously sought purpose. This is something that she's going to do for her kingdom. And then forget where I was passing it off. Is it?
I guess let's do through the attack because the next part is a little bit longer.
Okay. And then shows her looking out the window and then someone screaming, "No, please no." And then there's a giant blood splatter on the page. And then her face, you know, she's immediately alert, caught to attention, looking out the window. "𝗍𝗍, what's happening?" And there's another blood splatter. And it zooms in on her face. Her eyes are wide, worried. She's sweating. What? And then you see 𝗍𝗍 peeking in through the window, and she's crying out, "Bandits, we were ambushed and caught off guard. The royal soldiers have all been killed. Your Highness, we need to escape now." And you, it zooms in on her mouth. You know what it, to me it was, she's gonna say something. It's a big deal, you know what she's about to say. "Then what are you waiting for? Run as fast as you can, save yourself. This is an imperial order, go." And 𝗍𝗍's crying, turns away and says, "Yes, Your Highness, please forgive 𝗍𝗍." And let's see here. And it says, "Bandits are right outside the window. I can't climb out in time to escape." You can tell she's looking at the door, kind of narrowing down ways she can get out of this. "Weapon, I need a weapon and a horse." And then, this is so creepy. I hate this part. You see the door creak open and you see an eye and you 𝗕𝗕𝗕, and then it opens to the ugliest man in Lily Dust comics so far to me.
He beats Aniki.
What a find, what a find. And it's clearly one of the bandits that that has attacked her royal caravan. And she's being thrown somewhere, we're not sure yet. It says, "Get in there." And then she's screaming, turning around the corner, she screams, "No." And then you see that she's in the back of what is their caravan. And she's, you know, banging on the doors, trying to get out. "How dare you, let me out right this instant." And you see there's, you know, they're, "Hey, check out this loot." And they're going through everything that she had with her. There's several men involved. So, you know, escape's probably not, it's not an option for her alone. And then it shows the front of the carriage now, and the driver, he's sitting here listening. He's got his hand behind his ear. He's listening to her scream, "You killed my guards. Do you know who I am? I will have your heads for this." And he says, "You're a delicacy that'll fetch me a terrific price up north. That's what. I'll just take this cloak of yours. Keeps me nice and warm. As for our heads, I'm not sure who's going to do that for you now, princess." And it shows a soldier riding up out of the snow.
I did want to.
We're like, that's the guy who will do that for you. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Foreshadowing.
I did want to mention though, scrolling back when 𝗪𝗓 is pointing out and 𝗬𝗂's looking out the window, it zooms in on 𝗬𝗂's hairpin. And I wasn't sure if it was a lotus or a sakura, but if it's a lotus, those can signify enlightenment, purity, which we know she's probably a virgin because back then that was very important, and rebirth. But if it's a sakura, it's renewal, optimism, and it marks the end of winter and the start of spring. So it could be the conclusion to the comic. I don't know. Obviously it's really pretty, but if it's a lotus too, also they mention a lotus flower has its roots in mud, but when it opens it's a beautiful flower. So maybe that's partly her history, since we find out later is adopted, and this is like her moment to shine and be a beautiful flower.
Right, that's interesting. I like that.
And for me, like the fact that she told 𝗪𝗪 to run away first, and before, you know, worrying about herself or asking 𝗪𝗪 to help her or like open the door, she just told her run away. And that is like her selflessness and her care for other human beings, which obviously is something that she's evincing by even, you know, going to be married. But she's just compassionate, and she understands enough to tell her, like, this is an imperial order, go, right? She understands that 𝗪𝗪 is someone who will, you know, is prone to stick by your side unless like you give her a direct order, go, get out of here. This is, I'm telling you this as a royal person. So, you know, both caring and clever, you know, in a moment of crisis.
Yeah. And I wonder how many times she's actually said that in her life to somebody. This is an imperial order. You know, has she had that authority before being the fourth princess? So in this moment, she uses it to the best that it can be, literally to save somebody else's life. It's just, yeah, what a time to have to say it too.
And just how she doesn't panic. Like, she's like, I need a weapon, I need a horse, I need to get out of here. Like, she's not a helpless girl. She's kind of got a warrior spirit. So
It's one of her gifts.
Cool. Yes.
We like damsels in distress, but we like damsels in distress who help themselves too.
Yes, absolutely.
Alrighty, so now we've got one of the bandits says, lone soldier approaching. There's a fierce battle raging on in a nearby kingdom. He's probably returning from that battlefield. And so we see the soldier kind of coming out of the fog more. We still haven't seen his face. What a fool, heading straight towards 40 armed bandits. And then I'm guessing that's probably the leader of the bandits who has the cloak, who's sitting there driving the carriage that you is in. He says, who cares? Look at that armor. That thing must be worth thousands of gold pieces. And then another bandit says, I'll bet. Strong armor is highly sought after. I reckon more than women these days. Might fetch a higher price than that princess you got in there. And the leader says, well, why stop at one when we can have both? Kill him, but be careful and strike fast. I've never seen it before, but judging from how well made that armor is, he must at least be some sort of general or lieutenant.
For the bandit is not dumb.
Yeah.
No.
He knows.
Just greedy. Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't sense the real danger he could be in. He just doesn't care.
Yeah.
I mean, justifiably so. One guy, and therefore.
Yep.
Hasn't he ever read a historical romance? Come on.
This guy could take him out with one hand behind his head.
Yeah, he's going to use one finger.
Blindfolded.
So now we see the soldier a little more clearly coming out of the mist. You know, we're starting to see a little more detail. That he has some kind of like circlet on his head. You know, you can see that the horse has some kind of metal armor on it. And the bandits are saying, hey, you soldier, stop right there. And now we see the soldier from behind as he's looking down at the bandits all kind of grumbling and shouting at him. And we can see that, you know, his armor is very detailed. You know, you can see like the details on the rivets on the plates.
Weather appropriate too. It seems like it has fur. It seems like it's fur lined and weather appropriate.
I kind of imagine him while the bandits are grumbling at him, like he's thinking, puny humans. Well, and isn't also, it like, I'm sorry, go ahead. Isn't it true that like a soldier in battle on horseback is valued at like 10 soldiers on foot? So it's like, you're gonna attack this guy on a horse. It's not smart, but okay, sure. Try it, do it, see what happens.
Well, I like just take a moment, to appreciate his hair. I mean, that is some amazing hair. Long, black, flowy.
Watches Game of Thrones. That was something that I was going to point out, because in Game of Thrones there was a warrior who, the tribe itself, a warrior who has not been bested in combat, you know, they grow their braid, and when they
Mhm.
finally lose, they're forced to cut their hair to
Hmm.
show their shame. And I don't know how true that is in history and, cultures across the board, but that's the first impression that I got seeing this panel for the first time was he's probably not been bested. he's
And
probably
also,
never
like,
lost.
that ties into something, because I know, like, I have long hair and it's
Mhm.
very inconvenient, like, to wear it
Mm.
loose because it gets
Right.
stuck in things. And like, if you're battling, like, oh my God, hell no, I would never wear my hair loose. But maybe it's a sign of his strength that he's such a good warrior that he can succeed even with that tremendously long, inconveniently hair.
Flip the hair back.
Well, and I
He's
just
that confident and that capable that the hair doesn't bother him.
Mhm.
Well, I just think back to Tora and Poppy's conversation at Regina's Peak when
Right?
they're talking about, the king with the crazy long hair, and Tora's just like, yeah, what does do? Queen hold it up for him while he goes to the bathroom.
Oh, I have a great story about that. So my husband used to have, when he was a teenager, way before I knew him, he used to have, like, also butt length hair, and it
Wow.
was super, super long, and he has blonde hair naturally because he's Dutch, and he dyed it black because he was a goth teenager, and it was like
Ooh.
really, really long. It was like in a braid down to his, like, down to his butt basically. And he said, when did he decide to cut it off? When he went to the bathroom, and when he got up, the tip was wet.
Oh.
Oh, like, okay, time to cut it.
That would be a motivating factor for sure.
You
Ugh.
have to wear it like a scarf when you were using the bathroom. Just throw it over your shoulder like a continental soldier.
I'm by the way obsessed with long hair, and I've been begging my husband for all 11 years that we've been married to grow his hair, and now he's finally semi-agreed. So it's like down to here maybe, and I'm like just trying very hard to, like, hope he doesn't notice that, like, as it gets longer and longer and longer. So,
Don't get annoyed with it. My husband won't let his hair grow long. I've tried. Over quarantine, it was fabulous because he couldn't. So his hair was long and curly, wavy, and then he cut it.
Oh, see, I'm the opposite with my husband. I'm like, you have a mullet, you get a cut. Like, you don't look good with long hair. I was like, either commit to it and grow it out really long, or like get a haircut.
That's how I feel too, because I think I mentioned last time my husband has really long hair. He's also Dutch, so it's like a white blonde naturally, and I'm like, people pay a lot of money for that hair that you just grow naturally.
Yep.
But it's like down to here, like covering the chest, and like you said, Elizabeth, he used to keep it really, really short, and I liked that. But then if you don't keep up with it, it starts looking scruffy, and you're like, all right, either keep up with it or just let it grow. Don't do this weird, awkward, middle of the road thing. Not attractive. But he's attractive no matter what to me. So,
Aw. Well, and I was going to comment too with these panels. I forget which episode it was of Tiger Props, but somebody was talking about how Lily Dust does a lot with, like, her panels always have movement in them, even if people are just standing. And so I like how with this, like, you have the tree, there's not really a whole lot of background. So really the only way that we're seeing movement is with, the warrior's hair, the horse's tail. So even as he's coming closer, you can see that his hair is kind of like blowing in the wind.
it was Peg that said that.
Oh yeah.
It
Okay.
sounds like something that Peg would say.
yeah,
She
she's
was
very
talking about,
cinematic.
I think it was the episode where Poppy falls out of the tree and Tora goes to catch her. And that was one of the first times, like I think I mentioned last time how listening to Tiger Pops has helped me, like, think more deeply about the comic, and just look a little bit deeper. And that was one of the episodes where I was like, wow, I really never thought of that. And you see it, but you don't like process it. And then once you know to look for it, you notice it a lot more.
Yeah, like subconsciously, I think I'm aware of certain things that have been talked about on the podcast, but didn't have words for how it made me feel or how I noticed it. And then people like Peg who are like, oh, this movement, or Elizabeth saying, I think it was that last time you guys were all on, where Lily Dust does things in threes.
Yes, and you were absolutely right. There was a passionate kiss. It was number 3. Oh my God. Nope, I got so
So
excited.
I stole that.
Elisabeth was right.
Don't give me credit for it. I stole that from somebody like way back early on 𝗥𝗲𝗱.
Okay.
Somebody was
Yeah, I
talking
think it was
about
also
that.
Peg, by the way. That,
Yeah.
that said it was
Peg, okay.
Props,
Yeah.
props to
I just
Peg.
remember hearing Elisabeth say it on that one episode, but yeah, it does. I love the different perspectives. You have counselors, you have law enforcement officers, you know, come on, and yeah, it makes you think about everything totally differently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I love these panels though, where we're just the only movement we're seeing is his hair. Like everything else almost feels just like almost like still paintings, almost, except for like his hair blowing.
Is that maybe why the episode is called Prelude to a Storm?
Because the wind's starting to blow.
Because Rulon made his entrance and he's gonna fuck shit up.
Yep.
When I like how we get like, we still have not seen his face. We see his back in very high detail, like multiple panels, and then we get a close up of his neck as he's turning, so you see the peony neck tattoo. You can see that there's like blood on his face. He has an earring. You can see his like collar, and then he turns and you see his mouth, and it's just kind of set in like this, you know, somber, serious expression as he's kind of scoping out the people in front of him, and he just says, "You're in my way."
Totally fearless. Like
Yeah.
the fact that it took him so long to respond, and like what you were describing, the panels with him from the back, that just like leads up to intimidation and to show how powerful he is and how secure he is in his strength. He has no fear of them.
And the fact that he just kind of looks at all of them, he's probably counting how many there are, and then he's just like, "You're in my way, move."
That's
And again,
big dick energy for real.
Yeah. Well, again, we get another close-up shot of the neck tattoo, and that's the end of the episode.
Awesome. So speaking of like cinematography, like, yeah, the fact that she's just showing so many panels of him from the back, like he doesn't even have to show his face. Like his very image is so threatening.
Also,
and he's not respecting them, you know, he's disrespecting them by not even like looking at them. Which again, like big dick energy, like you said.
And he's literally above them on a horse, looking down at them. Yeah. They have no idea they should be afraid.
They have no idea.
That, like you said, Haley, this is a romance. They don't know.
You don't know.
Shining armor.
You don't know me. Well, let me get to know you.
Yeah, they'll know him for about 5 seconds as they perish on the ground.
Ooh, as they perish. They perish from just being so attracted to him.